And I remember the Baby Shambles manager at the time, James Mullard, and he's waiting for us on the pier going, lads, come on. And we're running down this pier. I'll never forget it, running down this pier. And then we literally got into the pier sort of, I don't know, venue. And then we're plug in and play. It was like running between. It was like our little Hard Day's Night bit.
Enjoyed it.
Good.
Well, let's crack on with today then, shall we? So Mac, we've got a variety of questions for you, Lloyd. So Mac, are you gonna set us off?
So the boys have set the questions out, Lloyd. So I'm just going to read it off a page and that. But I mean, it's a standard question. It'd be wrong of us to do these podcasts without talking about the Paddingtons and everything. I know the boys want to speak to you a little bit about Hillbilly Troupe and also about Goodwin, your role there and everything. But it'd be rude of us if we didn't touch on the Paddingtons. And of course, it's where it all really started for the Sesh. Like, you know, back in 2002. By 2003, you were sort of on the scene, I would say. I think your first album came out 2004, was it? 2005?
Yeah, our first releases came out in 2004. The album came out 2005.
Right, okay. So the question the boys have asked me to ask is, can you describe what being in a band like the Paddingtons actually felt like back in the day?
Yeah, I mean, so I've been into music since I was 12. Got my first guitar when I was 12. Bought my first pair of Adidas Samba and a tracky top because of Oasis. And so it's something I really always wanted to do as a job. Kind of got into sport and playing rugby and stuff, went off the boil a bit. But I guess when I was at White College, I got back into it. And it was never then like, I want to be in a band. I wanted to do it as a job. It kind of happened real organically. And that when I've been in a couple of bands here and there, but when I got with that lineup with the Tom, the Josh, Marv and Grant, it was like that. I can tell you what that felt like, because instantly that was like, we're a gang here. We're going to sack off things together. Girlfriends came and went. Jobs came and went. I remember me and Marv used to work in Gala Bingo, and they went to us, oh, where do you see yourself in 3 years? And was like, not here. We've got our gang. We had our T-Birds or whatever. We loved it. And that's where it all started. And that then it felt like a gang. It's such cheesy. It was listening to The Clash, Last Gang in Town, all that stuff. And I guess we acted that way, especially when we got onto the scene, because originally that band was a garage band, not in the style, literally in a garage, playing for ourselves. And we bounced off each other. We impressed and inspired each other. Grant used to tell me off like he does to this day still. But then when we went onto the scene, we had about 3 original songs, a couple of Stroke songs, and I don't know, a New York Dolls song or something. And we just thought we were the bee's knees. Well, we were. We had leather jackets and trainers.
When did you think the turning point was? When do you think the turning point was, Lloyd, where you thought, actually, we're onto something here? Because you were playing a lot in Hull, and then you started getting involved with some gigs down in London, weren't you?
Yeah, I mean, literally the turning point was, I didn't go, but Tom, Marv and Grant, I guess, went to go see the Libertines at. I mean, the Strokes had been, and not here, but we was into the Strokes big time. But the Libertines played at Rock City, and I remember them coming back the next day, and I was like, I wasn't. And went, we was literally with Pete Doherty outside the venue. And we was like, what? So he got chatting, and there was a little bit of a relationship there. And I remember Tom saying that he got a phone call off someone called Peter when he was laid in his bed, and Tom was like, who's Pete? Answered the phone, and Pete was talking to him. So there's a little bit of a connection there. But we was just fanboys. That's what it was. We didn't see it as a route. Yeah. But then the point where we started to take it more seriously was based on that encounter. There was a guy called Scarborough Steve who was originally in the Libertines, or a version of the Libertines, as was Johnny Borrell and all that lot. And we met him, Andy No Code, and the Tube Night. Do you remember the Tube Night at Silhouette? Of course you do. And he...
my night.
Yeah, of course you do. It was a precursor of the Sesh, wasn't it? And he knew a guy called Scarborough Steve, and he also, Andy put gigs on in Scarborough, and we went to play the Casbah in Scarborough, I don't know if it even exists, with this Scarborough Steve. And then when we got there, he went, I know Peter, I was in the Libertines. We was like, was you? Really? But we got chatting, and he went, there was about 2 people at the gig in Scarborough. Do you know what I mean? I guess they were into the Libertines and the Strokes on New York Dolls at that time in Scarborough. And then he said, I'll get you a gig in London. We was like, what? Okay, we'll do it. So we're real excited. We get on the train. Grant used to have his cymbals gaffer taped to his back because he was carrying it all, getting off the train. And we meet Scarborough Steve and this other guy, and I can't remember his name. It was his bass player because he was at the time in a band called the IVs.
Yeah.
You can take from that what you want. And we went out of King's Cross and said, where we're playing there. We was thinking we was going to play somewhere like the Water Rats or like a cool little indie venue. We were just starting to look at these up in the magazines, and it was in a squat. It was literally in a squat. We went in the window. It was a 3-story building. There was this like hall in there, and there was all the Portuguese punks running around who knew the Parkinsons. Remember the Parkinsons?
Yeah.
And then there was Selfish Cunt. He was there with. I remember we walked in. Going, what? Where are we? And he's spray painting Great British shit on the wall. We're like wide-eyed, going, this is brilliant. And that was our first experience playing in the London scene. So that's when we went, oh, we're in London. We're not just playing in Adelphi. We're not just playing here. We're not just playing there, which were important things we did. But this was the real deal. From there, we sort of got on the scene. So that was what it was. I think it felt amazing being with them boys, as the same as it did when I first met them, to the last gig he ever did. Do you know what I mean? That's not changed. They excite me. Do you know what I mean? And we get a buzz, and we've been on a journey together. But that was a turning point. I guess that Scarborough Steve encounter, really. Yeah.
It was a special time, definitely. I mean, you mentioned about Strokes. I remember when Strokes sort of broke through, and that sort of changed everything. We alluded to it a couple of weeks ago in the podcast. We were talking about the influence of that Strokes album. Is this it? And how it changed music, really, for us all. And it sort of brought a lot of the community together at that time.
Especially people
shared love of this new music. And we used to do the Grapevine nights down at Rhythm Room.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was good.
Told me what to dress it where.
Yeah.
Told me what to listen to. I've always been into music, and I was into the Pistols and all that lot well before the Strokes, but it was a band. Bands come every now and again that you dress differently, you act differently, and things organically happen because of it. The Liberty wouldn't have happened really in the format they were without the Strokes, and we wouldn't have existed. Arctic Monkeys probably wouldn't have existed in the format they would have because of that linchpin band. Because, as you know, before that it was arse end of Britpop and new metal, and it was rubbish. But anyway,
well, the other part to this question, if the boys allow me to ask it, was from starting out as a band in Hull to releasing albums and EPs along with touring the world. What elements are you actually the most proud of? What you achieved in your time in the Paddingtons?
The recordings.
Yeah.
When I listened to the podcast about the band last week or whenever it was, you put like a segment of all the music together in 30-second sections.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, and it was the journey of the Paddingtons musically. And I've never heard it like that. I've listened to records, and I'm not like I listen to them all the time, but I have done. And you listen, you go, I'm proud of that album, the way we went there and stuff. But that was quite nice to hear it in that way. So from Panic Attack or whatever, the first big single that did well, all the way to Ladyboy.
Was 21 your first single?
Yeah, we released 21. I remember this. It was Sunday we found out. Saturday night had been at the Morphine's old like flop house. They used to have this mad house down there, Lambert Street or somewhere like that. And my mum rings me up, and we'd had a party. And I get rang up the next day. My mum was, how did it do? How did it do? And this is the one we put out on Pop Tones. No press or anything. And I went, oh, Mum, it went to 47. She went, oh, never mind. And I was like, oh, yeah, all right. You obviously don't get it, but she was, I think she might have thought we got number one. So that was 21. And we recorded that at Fairview. John Spence did it for us. Yeah. And McGee liked it. He thought it sounded like the Saints. It was real chuffed. But like the album recordings and the singles off the album, that was all recorded late 2004, 2005, and it was all released pretty much all by the end of 2005. And the recordings.
Did you work with Owen Morris on that album?
Yeah. 2 weeks. 2 weeks. Wow. Yeah, that was. I won't go into it too much because I'll be talking about work soon. Yeah, but that was crackers. But and as a kid, I know. And at the time, our press officer was Johnny Hopkins, who used to live in Hull. Actually, he had a night called Crystal Ship in the 80s when I was a babe, and Maisie knows him and that. Yeah. And he was Oasis's press officer, and then our producer was the Oasis producer. We was like, it's a real deal. So working with him was great. And then we got to produce Stephen Street, who did the Smiths, and he did Bell and Sebastian, and he's done Libertines later on, and all, not Libertines, Baby Shambles. He produced us as well. So I was like that. I had Blair's and Oasis. Who's next?
Yeah.
Aerosmith's producer.
Did it feel as if all the stars were aligning at that period?
It was fun. It was good. We used to like pinch ourselves, like being in meetings with press officers and lawyers. We had a lawyer. Fucking shoot, pardon my French.
Well, I think is it Joe next who's got a question?
Yeah, hi Lloyd, you all right, mate? I was going to ask what the most absurd gig you've played is, but I'm guessing you just answered it with that squat one. So
no, that was the most absurd at the time. I mean, a lot of them were crackers. A lot of them were like mind blowing. I remember once we did a gig at the 100 Club for this promo thing. We got strong armed into doing it by management or label or whatever. And we said, we'll do it, but we wanted to do Baby Shambles later on in Worthing on the pier. And so we did this gig in 100 Club. There were about 50 people there, some London Pads fans, and there was some fanatic ones. And we was sober, which is a bit bizarre, because we played that early. And then we literally, it was like, hit off, get in the van, drove down to Worthing, which isn't that far, but when you're leaving London to get down south at tea time, it took forever. And I remember the Baby Shambles manager at the time, James Mullard, and he's waiting for us on the pier going, lads, come on. And we're running down this pier. I'll never forget it, running down this pier. And then we literally got into the pier sort of, I don't know, venue. And then we're plugging and playing. It was like running between. It was like our little Hard Day's Night bit.
what size venue is that then on the pier?
I don't know, I guess it was about 200 people, but it felt more.
Yeah.
I remember when we played, Pads fans were Libertines, Baby Shambles fans. So if you ever supported them, you was getting a really good response, like moshing and stage diving. So it was like running down there. We'd all been drinking the cider in the van to get us in a better mood. And then you go on and then you're getting that. And then you're like, oh, it's done now. Half an hour. What we're going to do next? Watch Baby Shambles.
Who was it who did you spot at Brixton, Lloyd? Was that Baby Shambles as well?
We did Baby Shambles twice. So I played Brixton 3 times. So and we supported the Bravery of all bands. We went on tour with the Bravery. That was a bit. It was all right. I mean, that was
mistake.
Yeah, honest mistake. There was I remember in the NME there was like boozing New York band.
There was a period where like, sort of the punk bands started going into the electronica bands, didn't they? There was sort of bands like Block Party and like Bravery, you mentioned. There was a lot of electronica sort of breaking through as well at that time.
There was, I guess, about 2007, 8 as well. The Claxons, I think the Claxons were fantastic. They were great, and that's probably a point where it kind of changed a little bit, and maybe we.
Yeah, I thought the early noughties was a really healthy period musically. There's some really exciting new bands coming through, and then by the tail end of like the noughties, we started going into more electronica, and there was a lot of like sort of remixes. Do you remember Hype 'em on Google? And they used to do like Moomaton remixes. You remember from doing like the Soul Room with Paddy and that. You used to download a lot of sort of like dance remixes from Hype 'em.
Yeah. I mean, there was a scene there, and it kind of. And by the end of the noughties, I think there was less that. Not that music isn't authentic, but it felt authentic. It felt scene based in London and the Glasgow scene, and at that time. But out the ashes of that, bands like Fat White Family came, and Fat White Family, their roots are in that scene. You might not remember the Metros, but there was in the Metros, and they were like a bit of a 2-bit indie band in our scene. And then you get Fat White Family, or even Yuck. Do you remember Yuck? Yeah, they came from another band. What was like the ashes of the rock and roll scene. And someone's coming in the room. I'm still interviewing Love. She thinks I'm interviewing. Kerry thinks I'm interviewing Wyatt, but she didn't realise I'm getting interviewed.
Hey.
Cajun Dance Party. Do you remember Cajun Dance Party?
Yeah.
That was in Yuck. So although when I don't know, like scenes go up and down, something came out of it, and Fat White's like the greatest rock and roll band of that era for me.
I also think like the Paddingtons as well, from your success down in London and sort of breaking through in that early part of the noughties, you were obviously aspirational to a lot of the bands and acts in the city of Hull, and like if you think when we first started, I've said this countless times, but there was a rotation of sort of 20 bands every month, just in a different lineup each week. But after the Paddingtons, there was a huge like rise of like young bands coming through, and it sort of kept the Sesh going for like 18 years. You know, all these new bands coming through, this constant.
You know what? There was bands like the bands that came directly after us.
Yeah.
Like I guess they probably won't like me saying this, but like the Welcome to Joetowns and Go-Go Kings and them bands. But there was also like Baggett and Turismo. There was a pre-existing band from a different scene.
Before,
but we created our own mishmash of going on. And I remember Baggett and all them lot there was down in London as much as anybody. And I guess the scene, the aspirational scene, from my point of view, as being a 20-odd-year-old kid at the time, before the Sesh, there was an aspirational scene in Hull, but I don't know if it had in our scene. There weren't legs to it. There was a lot of battle of the bands going on and things like that.
Yeah.
I mean, there was the Solarcos of this world and the Fonda 500s who would
salads and
doing amazing stuff, or Freaks Union and stuff. But there was this other scene, the Ray Wellesley and the Diablo scene, and
Ernest.
Jumped ship basically and got and they've made two brilliant records.
Yeah.
Really?
No, it was good times. Is it you, Dan?
It is. It's me next. It kind of ties in quite nicely. So, what do you think the biggest changes have been since your debut album to now for a local band that are trying to break through and make a career for themselves? And just to add to my question, just an offset a little bit. Just you've got an obviously different dynamic with having a brother in a band, and how was that?
Good. The first part of the question is the money. There's no money in the music industry now, so that directly impacts the way bands are now around things like press kits and things like that. So when we started, we did not care about developing our own press kit. There was no social media platforms really other than MySpace, and that was in its infancy to put your content on. There was file sharing, a little bit of that. We got a reputation through relationship building and being out there and gigging, and a lot, like loads. Like it's all right. I mean, we eventually got to more than 250 gigs in 1 year once. That's proper gigging. Do you know what I mean? So we weren't interested in that, and that now, because there is, and also the fact that you could get a record deal and a proper old school record deal, like what we got. Now there isn't that. So you've got to do a lot of things on your term. You're not going to be able to attract necessarily even a management company who's got a decent marketing budget. So you've got to go in with a pre-made kit, and that's your videos, which is great because you can do them on the cheap now because the software's there. Everyone knows a photographer. You can do them on the cheap, even though you should pay all artists. I mean that, but you do build on stuff when you first start and get favours. But you got to build it. Like when you apply to play the Sesh, you ask for that, don't you? Because it's professional standards. That's what goes on now in the game. So it was almost like when I used to apply jokingly for the Hillbilly Troupe, or even when I applied with the Paddingtons, I went, nah, we ain't got any of that. We ain't got any of that. You can point me to YouTube. It's all there. So I think that's it. The fact that there's no money now, and there was opportunity for money back then. And also you've got to do a lot yourself. And I think that's empowering for bands, because sometimes you go, don't get me wrong, when we signed to a major, we loved it. And we had a certain level, we had 100% autonomy with music, 100%. But there were certain things we might not have had autonomy on. And that would have been certain gigs that we might have done in certain cases because there's financial constraints and we needed to do it, or music video choices. Whereas now it's fully in the hands of the artists. And as long as you can keep away from them 360-degree deals where you're giving money of everything to people, which some people you might be aware of, you've got to get it on your terms. And there's been all bands, you two were here now, have been in bands, and you'll know what you've got to do now. But you also, there's a responsibility, but there's the opportunity to be a lot freer. I guess that's the difference. Yeah. We was all madder back then as well. It was a bit more fun, I guess.
A little bit.
And being in a band with my brother, he's the best drummer in all. He's the best. I mean, if it's not Ginger Baker or whatever.
Joe's shaking his head. Joe's going,
that's just an in-joke between me and Grant.
Do you know what I like about Grant though? He's a great drummer. He knows his instrument. He can adapt to in any band. He can drop in. He gets it. He's a musician. But if someone comes up to him and like, I don't know, Johnny Jones, a drummer from a band from somewhere, anybody, oh, so what kit do you have? And he goes, there. I mean, if it was a shit kit, he'd be like, well, it's a good kit, but he ain't, like me, he's not a kit guy.
Not a geek.
Yeah, not a kit geek. Yeah, he's here, so Grant, I love him.
How's he been?
Yeah, he's all right, mate. Is
he keeping busy?
He's been working because what he does for a job is he works in construction and essential work, so he's been out and about. Works a lot on his own though.
Yeah.
So he's out, but he doesn't work in a gang of lads. So there's
yeah. I bet he misses that.
Yeah, but yeah, he's doing grand, mate. Yeah, he's doing good.
Well, I think I've got another question here that the boys have given us. So, how did the reunion shows feel like for the Paddingtons? So, what year did you split up? Was it about 2000? Well, you've never officially split up, to be fair.
We did once in Venice.
Yeah.
A right big fight.
Oh, is that with Josh?
Yeah, there was with Tom, and Tom was the godparent for Berry, my eldest daughter. Yeah. Really into indie music, which is brilliant. And so she got christened, and there's a picture of me, Kerry, little Berry, Tom Atkin with a black eye that I gave him 2 weeks ago in Venice, and we split up big time. But no, we never split up. We kind of fizzled out at the end. It fizzled out, but then we got back together for you.
Yeah. Well, that's part of the question. Like, the question is, how did the reunion shows feel like? You know, coming back to Umber Street Sesh and doing that in the Big Top with Spiders from Mars that night and everything, but also the Libertines show. That must have been a huge homecoming.
Yeah, so I mean, like, I'll be honest, the 2014 one, I think it was a bit tense, really, because it was full on, small venue. We'd rehearsed twice. We had a bit of a debate internally around what Stewie's role would be. I wasn't that actively knocking around with Marv at the time. It was a bit full on. Tom hadn't performed. So we enjoyed the gig. It was almost like, you know, like cathartic, and it was like liberating to do what we did. But the build-up was a bit odd. I'm not to build it up because it's just a band, isn't it? But it was to us because it meant what we've done means a lot, and there's tensions and stuff. But we got there and it was a great gig, and there was a lot of people disappointed who didn't get in. There was people from all over the country who was at that gig.
I remember.
Didn't get in. And I was like...
We were going to try and screen it outside, weren't we? We were going to put it on the wall, but we couldn't get any volume.
We weren't allowed, I don't think.
Yeah.
But was telling all these people, there was Ben Bailey, a good mate of mine who was in the Unstrung, one of my peers from London. He turned up, but he spent all the day bombing around watching all these Ace Old bands. So he thought, I'll be able to get in. And it was that mental he couldn't get in. But that was good. But the other one was a lot easier. It was a lot easier. And we'd probably... When Josh is about, we've always got in the room and just played like this. In between the two lockdowns, we all got together and played, and we had big grand ideas of writing songs, and we just played stroke songs for about 3 hours and got pissed.
Brilliant.
Fun. So we're comfortable with each other a lot more. There was no like bad comments, and not that it was bad, but you know. But how it came though was the Libertines literally booked the Ice Arena, and Carl Barat rang one of us and said, "We're playing Hull. You got to get back together." And we went, "Yeah, we have." Yeah. That was done. So we did that, and then when we was rehearsing without Josh, because he was flying over, we FaceTimed him when we were in the back of the old Adelphi, and he goes, "I've got an idea. Why don't we do the Adelphi the day before the Libs gig, and why don't I book a venue in London, a venue in Glasgow, and a venue in Leeds, real good hot spots for us?" And we went, had a few beers. Yeah, do it. So we went on tour. It was there. So we decided from that point when we was going to do the gigs that Stewie wouldn't come on and do a bit part. So in 2014, he came on and did like 3 or 4 songs that he was actively involved with when Marv had left.
Yeah.
Now we're a 6-piece. So we did it, and that was really nice. Yeah, the Adelphi gig was brilliant. I don't know if he was there, but the Libertines gig was like a big old. The feeling I got going on stage at the Libertines gig when there's like 3,000 or 4,000 was similar to what I did when I walked on at Leeds Festival or in like the Big Tops, or when I went on at Brixton Academy, or when we headlined our own shows at like Camden Palais or QMU, all these big 1,500 capacity what we used to sell out. I was like, wow, high on nervousness. It was good. And the tour after it, that was the 4 days we did after it. We did it back to back as well. Took a week off work, and that was we behaved like it was 2005. We was all nearly dead. Do you know what we did as well on that London show? We booked Hoxton Bar and Grill for the London show, which is I guess 300 capacity. It's sold out in a day, and the promoter went, "We've got an issue here. We're gonna sell lots of tickets. What do you want to do?" And he said, "But if we sack off Hoxton, you'll never play there again." And we went, "We might never play again anyway." So we moved to this nightclub called Magma, and it was like 1,300 people, and we sold that out. That was in 2018, and that was amazing. Like, you think?
Do you think that's the end of the story, though, Lloyd?
No, nah.
No? There's more to come in there.
You know what I'm doing this weekend?
What's that?
Recording music with Tom Atkin.
Hey.
Still do stuff.
Very good.
Yeah, you might, if you want us 1 year, maybe next year, we'd do it. Maybe not that touring though, because
yeah.
we're old now, mate.
Well, that'd be really exciting. I think, is it Dan? No, I think Joe wants to speak a little bit about Hillbilly Troupe quickly.
Yeah, obviously we've touched on it briefly. I was just wondering, how does that compare to obviously the stuff with the pads? Because it's pretty poles apart musically. And how did that sort of passion for sort of folk and skiffle come about?
I'm a folkie. I've been a folkie since I was about 12. My dad's a folk music enthusiast. I've known Mick McGarry, the singer from the Hillbilly Troupe, through trade union stuff and from being a kid. So I've always loved folk music. If there's a B-side to Panic Attack, that's called Yarmouth Town, which is a folk song. So, and we just changed the words here and there. So I've always been into folk music. I'm political, and I love bands like The Clash and the political messages song. But folk music is the original punk music for me. It's about political strife. It's about injustice, about shagging. One of my mates, he said it's folk music's about knobbing and shagging and being hung. That's all the things that folk music are about. And I kind of like all that imagery, not literally, but you know, rebel music, I love it. And the Hillbilly Troupe was Dave Goff collared me when the pads split up, and he went, "I want you to play some pad songs at his folking all night." And I went, "Nah, I ain't doing that. I'll play some Woody Guthrie songs and we'll put a house band together." That was it. It was Lloyd Dobbs and his Hillbilly Troupe. And then 2 years later, now it's a 9-piece.
Yeah.
From New York in the band, playing accordion, whistle players. The average age of the Hillbilly Troupe was about 850. It's brilliant. And when we got it going in about 2011 properly, it won't pulls apart for me, Joe. I wanted that punk thing, but with folk. The Pugs, they're the greatest punk band of all time. Do you know what I mean? But they play Irish folk music. So I wanted to try and recreate that in many ways. There was a point, it was dangerously close to becoming a semi-professional, almost professional outfit, the Hillbilly Troupe. We used to get paid half-decent money. We played Costa del Folk Festival in Spain.
Yeah.
We never got asked back.
I've heard some stories about that.
No, yeah. And the Hillbilly Troupe is, we write original music now. We've done some recordings, we've done an album. It's all my songs I write recently have been folk-tinged, politics, Spanish Civil War stuff. That's a big passion of mine.
Yeah.
Nice. I'll pass on to Dan because we've only got 5 minutes if we're going to touch on the Goodwin stuff.
Right.
But again, it links in really well, because it's something you're obviously passionate about. So how did you get involved with working with Goodwin Development Trust? And give us a bit of background of the work, your day to day, I guess. And potentially talk about Kickstart and myself and Joe have obviously gone through Create for Change as well, which has been a lifesaver for the pair of us, really. So
them services are there for everybody in similar positions to you. Do you know Stu Baxter's got a lot to answer for, right? Because Stu Baxter was the guy right at the end of the Paddingtons. He was at the Warren. He'd been through Freaks Union and all, and he was working at the Warren. And he went, "You should do this. You should get involved in music and young people." And I started volunteering at the Warren briefly, helped set up the original Warren Records for me and Stu and another guy called Kima. And then I started volunteering at Goodwin. And then I decided to go to uni and study youth and community work. And social justice element to the work is about supporting people, in particular vulnerable people, to improve quality of life. That's Goodwin Development Trust. It's good charity in Hull. It's a brilliant charity in Hull. Better say that. I work from, and basically it's about supporting young people, adults, to reach the potential. So I currently manage the training skills and opportunities team at Goodwin. So most of the stuff we do at Goodwin in my team is 16 to 29-year-olds, getting them into or closer to the labour market, but by doing it, instead of just going, come do a CV, let's get you a little work placement, which is fine, that helps people, but we do it through creative industries. We get people involved in the creative industries and creativity, use the skills they developed on those learning journeys to help them either get into the creative industries or use those skills that are transferable to go into any work. It's good. I love it. I mean, I don't do so much frontline youth work anymore, or training work or tutoring, but I write a lot of bids and see what's going on nationally around political agendas and try and fit what we can do to that, but also quite cleverly, as an organisation, we're quite clever in the sense that you can get government funding or whatever funding and see what you can do in the gaps and do some quite cool social justice sort of work, or instead of just getting people into work placement, let's do it in the creative industries, because that's what we do at Goodwin. It's great. Yeah. Great to change though, because I know Dan and Joe both on that. It's the most successful project I've ever managed and been involved with. So essentially what we do is, if you're unemployed and you're aged between 16 and 29, contact Goodwin Development Trust, because we might be able to offer you a work placement. What's paid, you get paid by, essentially it's ESF money, European money. So you work for Goodwin, but then we put you in a work placement. So for example, you come to us and then you're doing a work placement with an organisation you're familiar with. And it gives a young person space to develop the skills, to do something meaningful to support the business as well as support themselves. And at the end of it, you can come back to us. If there's no job within the business you're at, we'll help you find work. So person-centred approach, it's a different approach to each individual. Some people might not realise they've got skills that can be transferred into the creative industry, but we'll work with them and then they go, hang on, why don't you go work at the Hull Folk Festival, or why don't you go work at the Humber Street Gallery, and we're getting placements there. Yeah. And it's giving people, especially now, because it's going to be tough, with what's going on. And the Kickstart is something very similar, and at Goodwin we do Kickstart as well, which is a total government initiative in response to youth unemployment because of COVID, and it's a very similar model. It's a very similar model in the sense that you get up to 6 months work placement paid, but it's separate to Create to Change. Create to Change, you get Goodwin staff who are doing the support work as well. So if somebody's in a placement and they're having an issue, the work placement provider could go, well, this isn't working. Where's my staff and the team? Go in and solve it. Not solve it as in go in and fix the problem, but help the business and the young person overcome that issue. Kickstart does have that. It does have that, but I think it's for more people who are more ready to go into the workplace straight away. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. So and just one more thing on Goodwin as well is we're massive friends of the Sesh. We love it what you do. We'll continue to work with you in any way shape we can. It means a lot. And when we did that big top that didn't turn up that year, but in fact, we was happier because it was Goodwin. You could see it for miles, and it was with it. We got young people who were further from the labour market was working with your staff. The amount of people you work with and the opportunities and the skill set you have around the Sesh team. Some of these young people were going who've never done anything. So the different from, say, Joe and Dan, this is an opportunity to flourish. This was like taster sort of work placements. And there was kids working on that stage. I did see one kid with a ladder walking. I went, maybe you shouldn't be doing that. Andy, go sort that out. But that's just the way it is, isn't it? It's real. So we love it, and we'll champion you, and hopefully we'll get to work with you again.